folks in here. It looks like it's time. Kevin, should we get started? And I see, Julia, I see you have your hand up. Is that for for a public forum?
Guess we'll find out.
Okay, sorry, before you get going, when I entered the meeting, it's very different from other Zoom meetings I've been in. I can't, so is it true that I cannot control the mute at all for myself?
Oh yeah, you should be able to control your own mute once we let you. So when you raise your hand, that indicates that you want to talk, and then I enable that function, and then you can unmute yourself.
Okay, yeah, I saw that message, but I mean, as far as like something showing up across, never mind, I see it now. It wasn't there before, the icon. There's also no chat box. Is that also like?
There isn't. There hasn't been on this Zoom, and that's something that we could talk about adding down the road, but it doesn't seem like that's a function that we have.
Okay, I was just wondering because it just looks a little different from what I'm used to. So sorry for the interruption. I know.
No worries.
Thanks.
Mute myself again.
All right. So, we got a hand up. So I'm gonna hazard a guess that she's here for public comment. So just to start us off, the first section is public comment. Or actually, no, sorry, I will stop myself. A couple of quick NPA announcements to introduce the steering committee members that are present here today. There's myself, Kevin Duderman, Tony Reddington, Barbara McGrew, and potentially, very likely, Jess Hyman, who's our host today. And then, so that's all the steering committee members currently in attendance. If you're interested in joining, basically it's a group that we get together 2 weeks prior to the NPA meeting and put together the agenda. We contact everybody, and it's a lot of emailing, and it's people who just want to do a little bit more. It's good fun. And yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Just a real quick announcement. Pretty scant on announcements this week, but we have another meeting coming up quickly next week, the 8th, Thursday. 6:30, same time, same place. Yeah, so we should keep an eye out for that. We'll be blasting that out on Front Porch Forum, on Facebook and all that stuff, but tell your friends, tell everybody. It's happening. This is kind of a last minute meeting. It's a bit unorthodox, but September's meeting didn't quite click, didn't come together at our normal time, which is the second Thursday of the month. And we missed that, but we decided to hold one just because we have a lot of people who want to report some stuff, and especially tonight's is a lot of people who are running for various state offices, and we thought it was important to provide the venue for that. So thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. And let's see, what else do I have to report? That would be it. So next on the agenda is public forum. Some ground rules. Raise your hand if you want to talk, and just share anything that you'd like to share with your NPA. It can be up to, we aim for like 2 minutes, but we'll cut you off at 3. Yeah, just we look forward to hearing what you have to share. So we got two. We got Carol, both Carols. So let's see.
So maybe we can go. Carol Wu had her hand up first, so we'll start with Carol Wu.
All right.
And Carol, I'm enabling your microphone and video, so just unmute yourself when you come on and go right ahead.
Hi. I just
Hello.
wanted to say hi to everybody, that I miss you and thank you for doing this. So I'm going to watch you guys on YouTube here to save my phone battery, but just wanted to say hi.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Okay.
Hello.
I'll see you later.
Okay.
On YouTube. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Excellent.
That was sweet.
So are there any other attendees who would like to join public forum? If so, please use the raise hand feature. So we have Carol Livingston from the attendees.
All right.
Carol, you have to unmute yourself now.
Hi, all. Thank you so much. I appreciate this time. As I said earlier, I'm a member of the Wards 1 and 8 Steering Committee. And I sent you all a letter, a couple letters actually, one in more detail this past weekend about a project that I'm working on with Aden Haji, who is a school board commissioner. And he and I have created a project that we now have met with Pet, and we've met with Sarah Synod at the family room in the community center. And we've gotten some support from several of the NPAs. Very briefly, what the project is to provide Zoom meetings in the language of many of our new American community members so that they can get basic information about how to register, but also how to vote. There's some great videos from the state that we're going to use sort of as a jumping off point that are also in people's languages. We plan to have an interpreter, a tech person, and an election expert who is sort of our facilitator for each of the breakout sessions. We're going to have 6 different breakout sessions, and we're doing this over the course of the next 2 Fridays. So what I'm coming to you for is the interpreters we really want to support. They work really, really hard. Working at Flynn School, I can testify to how hard the liaisons have worked all summer long and last spring and right now. This is hopefully a new crew, so they get a break. But we would like to ask each ward to contribute $200 towards paying for the interpreters over the course of these 2 evenings. So I'm not sure what the process is for that. I'd be glad to take questions if I have any time left in my 2+ minutes.
I think as far as like a back and forth, I'm not sure if that's something that we're prepared for right now.
Sure.
But you know, I saw your email. It went to everyone on the steering committee.
Yeah.
I personally haven't had much time to, really review it thoroughly, but
Sure.
I think definitely we'll be in touch. It sounds like a really cool idea.
Okay. All right.
Tony has his hand up. You're muted, Tony.
Okay. I now live in Ward 3, and I read the same emails from Carol. I am very concerned. I'm going to comment on this in public forum. And the last 3 comments that I have is vote, vote, vote. So I guess I'll move that if we have a number of folks here from Ward 3 that are online, I move that we approve $200 to the vote project that's outlined by Carol Livingston, and then we'll at least put this on the floor and see what happens. Allow people to have their say. If we would need, I assume, a second for spending this money.
I have a suggestion to Kevin that we put that under new business or something in our meeting and not use the public forum time for this.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if anything, we should just pick this up on the 8th, when we have time to, consult everyone on the steering committee and like actually put it as an agenda item. I don't think this is proper for public forum.
Carol, can you come back on the 8th?
I'll see what I can do. The first meeting is the 9th, so was just trying to line up some support, but let me look at my schedule and I'll communicate back. Is Kevin, are you the facilitator again for the 8th, or should I contact somebody else?
I will reply to like the email thread that had started and provide the Google group email so that everything will just go to everyone on the steering committee.
Okay, so I should contact you.
The reason we can't vote on it tonight, Carol, is it wasn't warned as an agenda item,
Sure.
so.
Sure.
But yeah,
That sounds
I'll
fine.
follow up with you after the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Kevin, very much.
Got it. All right. Let's see. Tony, I mean, did you have anything else for public forum while you're unmuted and whatnot?
Yes, okay, I'm unmuted then at the moment?
Yes. Yeah,
Oh,
you're
okay.
good.
It's hard. I went to a different screen. It says mute on it, and apparently it doesn't mean mute. So I do have a couple of comments. Let me get my other iPad going here. First, let's say that it's been difficult for all of us since March, and it looks like, from my point of view, it'll probably be a year next September before we again meet in person at the community center. And I think that we all recognize these are very difficult times. This last month, I learned for the first time that 1 in 4 Burlington residents live below the poverty level, which is about $500 a month for a family of 4. The census says 24.7% of our residents live in poverty. This was a shock to me. I'm still trying to process it. We're the, we have a poor population that rivals any southern rural town, and it's something for us all to think about. In terms of City Place, I plan to put a resolution, and this is for you, Kevin, next week, that a resolution that simply says that the city should ensure that any housing at City Place include 25% of all units, be Section 8 of federal funds, so people pay no more than 30% of their income for rent. The current inclusionary zoning, which are nice units, they're $1,000 a month. Those are like Redstone, and the Redstone housing, it's really middle-class housing. We really have to begin to recognize and deal with our low-income folks. The city says it's going to install 2 roundabouts in the Old North End next summer, one at North and North Winooski, and one at Decatur, North Union and North Winooski. That'll be the first ones. North Street and North Winooski is one of the is a high crash location with more than an injury a year. So that would be a really improvement in safety. Finally, the Champlain Parkway Environmental Justice Outreach has led to findings reported by Pine Street Council of both transportation racism and low-income discrimination in the King Maple neighborhood, which has 24% minority folks. I've been in transportation most of my life, and transportation racism and transportation discrimination by low income is all new language for me. I thought I knew it all, and the whole investigation of the Parkway pushed through a local residential neighborhood rivals the historic rejection both by our city and throughout the nation of trying to force high speed, high volume, unsafe roadways through our residential areas. Finally, the Moreau administration, I have to say this, has had 9 years to build a free roundabout, 100% federally funded at the Rotary for about $7 million. It's malign neglect by the Moreau administration and the Department of Public Works. This is the intersection of death desperately desired by the local community down at the corner by King Street School. And it's just unconscionable it has not been built. And as I said earlier, vote, vote, vote.
All right. Thank you, Tony. All right, who's up next? Kim Anderson has her hand up. All right, let's see.
She has to unmute.
Hello.
How are
Welcome.
you?
You're all right. How are you?
Good. So my name is Kim Anderson. I haven't officially met all of you, but I am tonight representing where I work, which is the Community Health Centers of Burlington on Riverside Avenue. And so I just wanted to, thank you. Thank you for the claps. I am taking this wonderful accessibility of Zoom for so many crummy things that have happened over the last however many months. The idea that I can participate this way and just kind of introduce myself and just as a neighbor say, we're here. We never stop being here and really appreciate everyone's support as we all kind of navigate these really, really complex times. And so, so that's really it. And just, if anyone has any questions, just go to chcb.org and that hopefully that's you're looking at the person who runs that website. So if there's any questions, if anyone has trouble getting through on the phones, we're working on it. And certainly we're encouraging this year everyone to get their flu shot more than most years. So that's it. Just wanted to take the time and say, hi neighbors. We're here as always for the last 50 years and appreciate everyone's mask wearing and social distancing and neighborly compassion. That's
Thank
it.
you. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you. Thank you for your work.
Appreciate you. All right. Barbara has her hand up.
Yeah.
Barbara, what's up?
Thanks, Kevin. I believe I saw on the participants list that Secretary of State Condos is in the meeting. And if that's true, I just wanted to welcome him and hope that he will come back in person someday when we can offer him a community dinner. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, right on. Is that? Huh. Yeah, cool. Sweet. All right, so moving on, if that's the last of, hey, Charlie's joining us.
I had two quick items for public forum. If I can.
Thank you, Jess. Sorry. Yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
okay. So I'm Jess Hyman, Ward 3, live on North Champlain Street, and I had two quick comments. One, of course, there's a plane going over right now. So first of all, I wanted to offer a huge thank you and congratulations and kudos to Melissa Kane. Melissa isn't on the call tonight because she's receiving the Roots of Prevention Award, but Melissa is the woman behind the Old North End Mask Initiative, and she, with an incredible amount of effort and love and determination and moxie, has distributed more than 10,000 masks in the Old North End and other parts of the city. And it's something she was doing mostly as a volunteer, and she roped in a whole lot of other people to help, and it was an amazing effort, and I just wanted to publicly recognize the work that she's done. So thank you, Melissa. I'm sure she'll see this recording. The other thing I wanted to mention is that wanted to make sure that everyone knows about the housing assistance that's available now through CARES funding that's come from the federal government into Vermont. And there are a number of different housing assistance programs to help with back rent, to help with other expenses, to help with mortgage support, and also a new program called Money to Move that can help folks move into more sustainable apartments. And so there is money out there available for almost anyone who has been having trouble paying rent because of COVID. And we want to make sure that everyone knows about it. There's a new way to find out about all the different resources available. So the City of Burlington has had the COVID recovery resources website up for many months with lots of COVID related supports. And there's a new page on the CEDO website now that's housing related. So if you go to burlingtonvt.gov/CEDO/housing, and you'll look at, there's a renter resources box. And this was a project that was a partnership between CEDO, the Fair Housing Project at CVOEO, the Burlington Tenants Union, Legal Aid, the Human Rights Commission, and others who are members of the Burlington Fair Housing Committee. And it's a great set of resources. So I encourage folks to go check it out. And that's it.
Very nice. Thank you, Jess. Cool. All right. So if that Now that's it, possibly. Yeah, cool. I don't see any other hands. All right, sweet. Yeah, so before we move on to the next section of our agenda here, let's see. Yeah, okay. So just a heads up before we move on. Just want everyone to know that even though there's not many participants here, there's a crowd of 16 total. That this whole meeting is being recorded, and it will be posted on both YouTube, on the Town Meeting TV, otherwise known as Channel 17 channel on YouTube, and also on cctv.org's website. Just so everyone knows, it's not just going to us. It's going to be the links are in the Front Porch Forum posts. It's getting out there. Just wanted to reassure everybody of that. So the first thing that we got to do is hear from David Zuckerman, if he's still in the house.
Wait a minute.
What's that?
I thought that there were nominations and elections of candidates for NPA Ward 2-3 Steering Committee.
Yes, we were gonna have to do it a little bit out of order because public comment took a little bit longer than expected.
Okay.
And the lieutenant governor has an obligation around 7, so we gotta get him in.
Okay,
when we can. All right, Lieutenant Governor, I believe you're on. Hello.
Great. Hello. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate a few minutes of your time. I recognize many faces. Always excited to see new ones. And thank you for slightly adjusting your schedule. I do have another meeting at 7, so I'm unfortunately going to have to be very quick. It sounds like public forum went a little bit long, and that's fine. That's one of the most important parts of NPAs. I remember being at the Ward 1 NPAs for many years, living in Ward 1, attending many NPAs in Wards 2 and 3 when I was a representative. That overlapped into that district. And of course, as many of you know, I'm running for governor. My website, I'm just going to put it out now and later because I'm going to be really fast, is zuckermanforvt.com. I had raised my hand when Carol Livingston was in because I didn't know if the pitch for $200 was sort of who's willing to throw in 10 or 20 bucks to get you to $200 versus a vote of your steering committee. But I will try to track her down, or maybe if one of you can email my team, because I'd be happy to support with a few bucks to try to make that happen. I've been Facebook posting a lot of the different translations through COVID that Allison Segar and others have been working on as new information kept coming out, getting new translations. I think it's been really important to try to do more than what the state was doing, but do it as individuals as well, because it really wasn't enough coming from the state to keep people aware of the things that they need to know. And unfortunately, obviously, we had a big outbreak in Winooski, in part language barriers, in part, economic inequities, where you have more people living in dense spaces. And I think the COVID crisis just really has amplified the realities and thankfully, in some regards, the awareness of how these economic disparities lead to differences in health outcomes, differences in societal perception of people, and so forth. And I'm running for governor because I think everybody's voice and everybody's reality needs to be a part of the discourse. So when we make policies, we don't perpetuate systemic racism, perpetual poverty, and all the different struggles that our economic, social, and political systems have created over decades and centuries. And is it all going to be solved because David Zuckerman's governor? Of course not. But if we can at least bring more voices to the table, as I've tried to always do in my 22 years of public service, bring those voices to the table during policy development so that things can be looked at through more lenses before the last minute. That's what I'm going to try to do. I got into this race because of economic disparity and the climate crisis and our rural economy. I think there's real opportunities to invest in affordable housing, weatherization, broadband, carbon sequestration, and agriculture and forestry, to start to do things that will both develop the economy, create jobs, and start to reduce our carbon footprint and do Vermont's part to tackle the climate crisis, which I can tell you as a farmer is here and live and now. I'm very thankful for the 2.6 inches of rain that we just got over the last night in about 12, 13 hours. It was one of the more normal rains we've had, where it was a long, steady rain, some heavy rains, but not too bad to wash things out, versus the stranger, more intense rains we've been getting, which lead to gully washouts, soil erosion, water quality pollution. It was still probably more water than the Burlington system could handle. I get that. But we are facing climate crisis now. We have to address it now. My 14-year-old daughter, many of your kids, the rest of us for our lives right now are going to be impacted. And I'm running for governor to tackle both the continuation of handling of the COVID crisis and keeping people safe and working better systems to keep more people safe, as well as tackling the climate crisis, the economic disparity, the hunger, the homelessness, and the challenges that we're facing right now. It's going to take creative vision. It's going to take revamping aspects of state government that have done the same thing for 30 years. It's going to take rebuilding a food system for resilience. And I'm trying to pack a lot in real fast. I'm willing to throw out time for one or two super fast questions. And then unfortunately I got to run. Zuckerman, FORVT.com. We're trying to be up on TV and radio. We're trying to help amplify opportunities for learning about vote by mail and registering, which I was excited about Carol's question. And yeah, I don't know who moderates or how you do questions, but I'm all ears.
Cool. Yeah, it looks like we have a hand up, two hands up, Erica Reddick and Jean Waltz. I think Erica had her hand up first. Jess, if you could hook that up.
Well, my guess with the spelling is
that's
probably
interesting.
Redditch. Is it Redditch or Reddick?
Reddick.
It is Reddick. Oh, because
Yes.
it's got that IC of that Eastern European sound, but apparently not.
No, we wouldn't know. My husband is black, so if it was from there, we wouldn't know.
All right.
But I do have one question for you.
Sure.
I'm grateful I get to ask. I wonder if you could tell Vermonters why they should vote for you, Lieutenant Governor, or excuse me, for governor, when you admitted to stealing from Vermont taxpayers, especially given that now that in your tax returns, you're a pretty well-off person. I'm just wondering if you could explain that for us.
Actually, thanks for the opportunity. And I never admitted to stealing, actually. I talked about how the system works. In fact, I went to the media to talk about the bizarre allowance system that we have in the legislature. I was about, I think, the 30th lowest out of 180 compensated legislators. The system was an allowance system, which means whether you drove or not. In fact, in statutes, it says if you're home sick, you're still supposed to get those mileage allowances. So I'm just going to let you know some facts there, and I'd be more than happy to follow up if you want to reach the campaign, because I would talk to you for half an hour about this, because it's really a big piece of misinformation that's then been perpetuated. What happened in 2008 during the recession was the governor then, Douglas, said all top level employees are going to take a 5% cut. And they were all paid $60, $80, $100, $120,000 in order to help with the recession. Then some of the Republican legislators said, well, we should do that in the legislature as well. Most people don't realize the legislators then got about $10,000 in pay for the year. People don't realize legislators get no health insurance, no benefits, but they do get mileage or overnight allowances, depending if they drive or they stay overnight. Those allowances have nothing to do with the actual cost. It's not a reimbursement. So if you rented an apartment for $500 a month, you still got $110 a night. So legislators that live far away would make $5,000 over the course of the session, while those of us that commute would make, $2,000 or $3,000. So the range in pay was quite extreme based on your geographic location. So a 5% cut in your pay was a much bigger portion out of those of us that drove short distances. So I went to the media to say our system is messed up. A 5% cut will disproportionately affect us. And instead of talking about the system, they said, well, because you carpool, which they didn't say how often. I carpooled about once a week in someone else's car. I drove everybody about once a week. And because I was farming, I drove myself about twice a week. So it was very, very inaccurately portrayed. And I hope that's helpful. And then as far as my income and pay, just so people know, I've actually got multiple years of tax returns out public because I've now run for lieutenant governor for 4 years. When I first ran, my first income line was about $60,000 because at that point I was 20 years into the farm, finally making about $30,000, $40,000 a year on the farm. And by then the legislature was up a little bit and I do have a duplex in Burlington that I net maybe $3,000 to $5,000 a year on. So my income was actually pretty normal. And back when that article came out, I was making about $35,000 a year. I was still living in Burlington. I was in the duplex, so there was less income, and I didn't own the farm yet that I own now. And these last couple years, with the lieutenant governor's salary of $70,000 plus benefits, it's gone up. And then this last year, because my mom died, I did inherit some money. So if you want to put all that together, it's a very different story than what things are perceived. And I've tried to pack it all in fast, but I hope that's really helps change the perception of what that story really is about.
She's Erica
Yeah.
is muted. There you go.
And then if, unfortunately, I've got to run, but if people reach out at info@zuckermanforvt.com, I will answer any other questions. And I'm super sorry that this got truncated, but I've got to get to the other meeting, and I'm really sorry.
No, thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Please reach out. All right. Bye-bye.
Right. So now back to our regularly scheduled program. We have a nomination for the Wards 2 and 3 Steering Committee for Jess Hyman. If anyone would like to, Barbara, Tony, Charlie would like to nominate her. I mean, I guess I could. There's no rule against that. But.
Both Tony and I live in Ward 3, as Jessica does, and I'm happy to nominate her.
Good stuff. Yeah, sweet. Is there anything more to that, Tony? I'm not familiar with the process, or Barbara. I don't know if you know.
I think that did Tony second it?
You're muted, Tony.
I would suggest that you that she have a chance to say something for a minute, and any other nominations, and then hold a vote. For Ward
Awesome.
3, for Jessica, it would be just the Ward 3 participants who would vote.
Gotcha. I'm Ward 2, so yeah, that would not work. Okay.
Thank you, Tony. I'll be brief. I'm Jess Hyman. I live on North Champlain Street. Lived in the Old North End for 20 some years. You know, six or so of those as a renter, and the last 14 as a homeowner. I've been involved in the community in various ways through community gardening, as a participant in the NPA. I love the Old North End. It's the best neighborhood in the city, and I think we've got some really good stuff going on here. And more people could and should be involved. So one of the main reasons that I wanted to join the steering committee is to help get more people on these Zoom calls and hear more voices and help join this fine group of folks to really be responsive to what our neighborhood wants and needs, and to make this community even better. So that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Looking forward to it, Jess. All right. Yeah. So is that Tony? He's on the phone. Barbara is is that, so do we hold a vote just among the attendees then? Is that how we do it on Zoom?
If this should be, Tony, you need to get off the phone, because I'm not clear if it's Ward 3 residents that vote for this, or even though we're Ward 2, 3 that meet together, we still have separate wards. So I think, Tony, is it right that Ward 3 residents would vote, or everybody? Not that I think there's going to be any problem with this, but.
Tony, you're muted.
We are electing a person to represent Ward 3. So, as Kevin noted, he's in Ward 2, and he represents Ward 2. So the election is Ward 3 people only. And I realize it's maybe difficult to figure out of the participants that are online, which ones are from Ward 3 and which are from Ward 2, or outside the district, outside our wards.
You just have them raise their hands, I guess, right? If say.
Yes, that would good idea, Kevin.
Cool.
And they would just have to move the little hand there on their screen.
Yep. Okay. So everybody in attendance, if you are a Ward 2 resident and would like, oh, sorry, excuse me, Ward 3 resident and would like to confirm Jess Hyman to the steering committee, please raise your hand with the Zoom thing, the little blue hand. Awesome. Awesome. Anyone? Okay. Everyone can put your hands down. All right. And then I guess, is that it?
Charlie votes yes.
All right, Charlie. All right. Cool. I mean, is there like, any opposed? Is that like a thing? Okay. Anyone opposed, raise their hand.
No, I have to lower my hand now. Wait a minute, I don't know how to do it.
We know it's not a no.
Okay.
But yeah, speak now, forever hold your peace. All right, it's confirmed. Congratulations, Jess. Welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor.
Welcome to this ragtag group. All right, so moving on to the next agenda item here. Andrew Champagne, unless he's like dialed in, I don't think he's on. Charlie, is he with you?
No, he's not with me.
Okay.
I wonder if Secretary of State Condos would like to comment, because it's his bailiwick. Information on Vermont voter registration procedures.
That's a really good point and a great idea. Yeah.
And here's his picture and everything.
Awesome. He's on it. Okay.
He needs to unmute though.
I am here. This is completely different Zoom setup than I've ever seen before. Let me see. Can you see me now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now we got it. So I'm sorry. Do you want me to just speak about what's going on, or did you have specific things, Barbara?
Well, there's 10 minutes on the agenda, and maybe you could speak to what's going on, but the topic is information on Vermont voter registration procedures, and anything else you choose to add.
Okay. So our voter registration procedures are pretty simple. You can vote, you can register in many ways. You can register online. You can register same day at your polls. You can also register by paper. The online is actually more accurate and cheaper for the state. It provides better information for us rather than us having to read people's handwriting in small print on the forms. I think that we're somewhere around 490,000 registered voters currently, and excuse me. Of those, about 440,000, 450,000 are considered active voters. The remaining 50,000 are considered challenged voters, which means that the Board of Elections, or the BCA, Board of Elections in Burlington, BCA and other towns have, for some reason, either someone said that person has moved or that person hasn't voted in several elections. You send them a challenge letter. The challenge letter is not the end all, but what it does is it at least provides for some input to the boards of civil authority and Board of Elections before you remove them. There are strict guidelines that we have to follow from the federal government. That's why, people always talk about how there's a lot of errors on voter checklists. And the main reason is it is hard to take someone off the list unless you have absolute proof that that person should no longer be there. And that's a good thing, because elections, frankly, are a constitutional right, and you should be able to not have to worry about whether you are allowed to vote. My personal feeling is, if someone doesn't vote for 3 or 4 elections and then they decide to show up, we should never take someone off just because they didn't vote. We should take people off because they moved. We should take people off because they died. I know that I've been asked about dead people being on the voter checklist. Simple answer is the dead people don't call us up and tell us to take them off the list. We have to rely on either family members telling us or getting vital statistics from the Department of Health. Sometimes those take many, many months and sometimes even years before it gets to us. If a person was, say, living in Florida or vacationing in Florida or whatever and died there, or Arizona, we have 3 main hospitals that serve Vermont, Albany Medical, the southeast corner. You have obviously UVM, and then you have Dartmouth. 2 of those 3 are out of state, so the information doesn't flow real quickly. By the way, it is not illegal for a dead person to be on a voter checklist. It's also not illegal for a person to be on a voter checklist here and someplace else. What would be illegal is if that person voted in more than one place, or if that dead person voted, that would be illegal. So it's there's a lot of rhetoric out there, and I guess I just think that it's too bad sometimes. And for instance, that like this year, I just want to highlight this year, because when February hit us and we started to see that we were going to be running into a situation with the pandemic, we had 2 overarching goals that were driving all of our decision making around elections. One was to protect Vermonters' voting rights, and 2 was to protect the health and safety of all voters, all town clerks, and all of their poll workers. We've heard many success stories, particularly in states with expanded vote by mail, which has proven to be safe, simple, and secure. Vermont was in an excellent position due to our existing laws to move forward with what we have done. I think I should probably give some of you, because not everybody knows me that well, some do. I grew up in the city of Burlington. I grew up in the South End, right near the Rotary, Tony. In fact, as a kid, I grew up in the house right next to the Greek church, and my father, when we used to bug him, sometimes he would tell us why don't you guys go down to the Rotary and play? That was in the old days when the Rotary was actually much bigger than it is today. And it actually had probably a 10 or 12 foot light on it, blinking light, to warn people coming into the intersection. So I attended Adams School, which is no longer a school, and I attended Edmonds Junior High School, which is what it was called back then, before I moved to Burlington, and then to Burlington High School. And then my family moved to South Burlington later in my high school career, and I graduated from South Burlington before graduating from UVM. I've never left Vermont. I have over 30 years of business experience. I have over 30 years of elected office. I served 18 years in the South Burlington City Council, 8 years as a Chittenden State Senator, and 10 years as the Vermont State Secretary of State. And I think we can really acknowledge that we are in extraordinary and trying times, and COVID has really challenged many aspects of society and of our lives. Elections haven't been immune, and that's why we've taken the steps that we have, and they've been very successful so far. As election officials, whether it's the Board of Elections in Burlington and the different ward clerks and whatever, we all expect and hope for one thing: smooth sailing elections with no issues. And that is always the goal that we have. And frankly, we did that this year as we set a state record for turnout. The previous record was 2,000 post-civil unions, when we had 122,000 people that voted. This August, we had 174,000 people voted, and of that, about 125,000 voted by mail. One of the things we have is how different early voting and absentee voting ballots look. Well, I'm here to tell you right now that whether you have an absentee ballot, an early vote ballot, or an in-person voted ballot at the polls, they all look the same, and they're counted the same. It's not a partisan issue, and it shouldn't be a political issue. Vote by mail is really a simple, safe, and secure. It's been proven in at least 5 states have had vote by mail for several decades. And those states are Oregon, Washington, Colorado, Utah, and Hawaii. I don't think anybody would say that Utah is a Democratic state. I know there's a lot of rhetoric around, oh, vote by mail is a Democratic issue. It's not. Utah has a Republican legislature, both Senate and House, and a Republican governor, and they embrace fully vote by mail. Pretty much every state has some form of vote by mail. We have different rules in place, but we all have vote by mail in one case or another. And I just would say that the thing that I think is important to remember is that our military has been voting by mail since the Civil War days. So it's been going on for quite some time. I'll end by just stating that as Vermont's Secretary of State, I will always work to ensure that our elections are free, fair, and accurate. I will say that true voter fraud is the denial of the opportunity for any eligible American to cast a ballot. I will also say that the more eligible voters or Vermonters who vote, the stronger our democracy, and that no voter, no Vermonter should have to choose between their health and their right to vote. With that, I'll end.
Thank you,
That's a
Secretary
lot of
Condos.
stuff I threw at you.
Yeah, yeah. But no, that's all great information, and we really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Kevin?
Could I just make a comment
Yes.
to Mr. Condos? So this is Charlie.
Yes.
Okay, so my comments are, I'm hoping that the ability for the ward clerks and the town clerks to be able to process absentee ballots before Tuesday. So to be able to process the absentee ballots, I'm hoping that becomes a permanent feature in Vermont and not just due to the emergency pandemic conditions.
That's a great question, Charlie. And frankly, we have for the recent years allowed the day before the election for the clerks had asked us for at least the day before the election. And that's been in place for a couple of elections now. And I think that we will probably go to some form of this being permanent to allow for ballots that are coming in early from the early vote period to be processed. And I want to assure people, like in the city of Burlington, you use tabulators, which 140 towns now are using tabulators out of the 246. But the 140 towns represent about 80% of the overall vote as well. And what happens is that you can run the ballot through the machine, through the tabulator, and all it records that all the public can see is one ballot. The tabulated scan is actually kept internal and cannot be seen until you actually end the election. There's a process to end the election. You have a specific, what we call ender card that has to go through the machine that ends the election, shuts it off, and then it allows the machine to tabulate everything. And then you turn the key to a certain position and it prints off the printout on all the races. So it really is, it remains secret, even though we allowed for 30 days ahead. But that is what allowed us for the primary, frankly, with such an increase that we had, we were able to have 98% of the unofficial results in by midnight on election night. And we don't think there will be any difference going forward on this. I also want to add one thing, because Barbara, I think you were talking about new Americans at one point early on. Even though Vermont has never crossed a threshold of percentages, we're not even close for doing election ballots and stuff in any foreign language. We took it upon ourselves. We worked with some Burlington residents and came up, excuse me, we worked with the New American community to develop voting instructions, sample vote ballots, and actual voting videos in 6 different languages. And I can't for the life of it's all on our website. You can find it there. But it's like French, Burmese, Swahili, Somali, Nepali. I forget that I'm missing one, but there are 6 languages. We didn't choose those languages. The New American Community chose the languages for us to do that. We did it for Burlington and Winooski as a pilot project for town meeting day, and we're continuing to do that again for this general election. And we're pretty proud of the fact that we were able to move in that direction.
Okay, can Charlie make one last comment?
Sure, Charlie.
Okay, so the last comment is just that in many places in Vermont, the polling places are dependent on the school system. So they use the schools for voting places. And I just want to make a comment that I'm hoping that that conditions do not get worse during the pandemic, because there's a natural conflict between the need for the polling places to be held in the schools versus the safety of the schools. So I'm hoping that conditions continue to be safe, so that we don't get a crisis situation where the school systems suddenly say, because of worsening conditions, you cannot use the schools for a polling place, like either in November 3rd or in March. So I got my fingers crossed that conditions remain acceptable to the school systems. Thank you.
And Charlie, just to follow up on that, we've had discussions with the Agency of Education prior to. They sent out a bulletin to everybody, all the schools. Yes, it is a concern, and that's why one of the reasons why we've committed to any town that wishes that needs to, that we would pay up to $500 for disinfecting after the election. It's a serious issue, and I think it's going to be something in the future that we're going to have to address. But we have a lot of towns in this state. The schools are the only place they can run a poll. There just isn't any location otherwise in some of the smaller towns. So it is a concern, and we certainly are cognizant of it. But I will tell you that all 275 polling districts will be open. They open from 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. in the morning. And they have to be all open by 10, and they all close at 7 p.m. on election night.
Thank you.
All right, beautiful. Thank you, Secretary Condos. That was awesome. Appreciate you. All right. Next up is who would that be? I have Emma Mulvaney-Stanek staged for 7:15, and there was also a request for 7:30. Okay, so that's not yet. Yeah, so let's bring in Emma for, what do we slate? 5 minutes? Yeah, 5 minutes, and then like 5 minutes of Q&A, if that works for you, Emma.
Sure, that's great.
Beautiful.
All right.
Take it away.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Emma Mulvaney-Stanek. I live over on Front Street in Ward 3. Nice to see sort of see everyone in this weird Zoom world we're still in. So for folks who voted and participated in the Democratic primary, I'm grateful to report that I was victorious in the primary on August 11th and won the Democratic endorsement. And through the caucus process, won the progressive endorsement for the state representative district of Chittenden 6-2. Chittenden 6-2, as of right now, until the census, is about 50% Old North End and 50% of the southern part of the New North End. Goes up to about Letty Park and Ethan Allen Park, down through Battery Park. So I'm running uncontested in the general election. So I'm happy to say just a couple more words about myself, but I'd really love to open it up to questions because, again, I'm uncontested. So it's kind of this awkward, unique situation. But community engagement is actually one of the main reasons I decided to run. So I really hope to be in dialogue with folks as much as possible. Just a little bit of background on me. I was a former city councilor for wards 2 and 3 about eight or so years ago. serving for the Old North End. And when I ran then, and why I'm still running now for elected office, is really around economic justice issues. That's what I've had my professional career based on. I've been a labor organizer, I've been a community organizer. And I think being elected official, especially from this part of the city, having a true grounded knowledge and value base really around economic justice issues is really fundamental. And also a true commitment to, as I said before, community engagement. So really valuing and participating in the neighborhood planning assemblies, the NPAs here in both the New North End and the Old North End, of course. And also just finding, especially with COVID, innovative ways to reach out to folks and engage people. People are busy. I'm a mom of 2 young kids, and meeting times like this are difficult. So I'm very grateful. I have a partner who I think has the children right now. I'm pretty sure they're fine. I don't hear any screaming, so that's probably good. And, you know, but it's real. It's like real life, and people are working more than ever, and people are out of work because of COVID. So people are under a lot of stress. And the job of community leaders is to make government, I think, as accessible as possible and themselves accessible as possible, because we elect folks to really be representatives, but also community conveners and engagers, because we don't know it all. And I think our decisions only benefit and get stronger and more informed when we engage with our constituents. So with that said, you can look more on my website. I have social media channels up as well. The website's emma4vthouse.com. You can read more about my platform there. There's a lot on economic justice, but I'm also running on education and really bringing justice for marginalized folks to the table and to policy. Most recently, I've decided actually to give back an endorsement that was a very hard decision from the Vermont State Employees Association. There was a news story about it this week, largely because I was really troubled around some Black Lives Matter inconsistencies within that organization. VSA is not the only organization, but we have to start to have critical conversations if we're going to change culture and status quo that really harms Black, Brown, Indigenous folks in our state. There's a lot of work to do, and we have to be courageous and show up and stay in critical conversation. So I'll stop there. I can ramble on forever, but I'll stop there and see if there's any questions, because I know the agendas are always packed at the NPA.
Yes, they are. Yeah, so if you have a question for Emma, raise your little blue hand. We'll
Trying to
bring you
figure
on board. Looks like Barbara, you got a question?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
like you, Emma, I've worked for a union almost my whole life, so I understand. I read both sides of the issue of not accepting the state employees union endorsement, and I understand that it's a principal position. I understand that we need a lot of reform. There's systemic racism everywhere. I do know that the union stood in solidarity with the Blacks. You know, its overall policies in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement, that they stood in solidarity with George Floyd and his family. And some segment of the union, some member, some leader, I don't know what, apparently testified against eliminating chokeholds on the part of police. Is that correct? Am I correct?
That's my understanding. Yep.
Okay.
And I believe it's well, it's on the legislative record. Yeah.
What as a progressive too, and somebody concerned about the very issues that you're concerned about, I hope that there isn't developing a kind of McCarthyism of the left and a cancel culture on the left that will paint good organizations with a bad brush because of some small, I know it's not a small thing. I know the chokehold issue is a very important issue, but it concerns me that in lockstep, 3 of you said, you know, this union is tainted.
Would you like me to respond, Barbara?
I would like you to.
Yeah, of course. So, the reason of turning back the endorsement, I really thought deeply about this, because it wasn't just because of one member of the union chose to testify on the chokehold legislation over the summer. It's actually a larger pattern, both some internal communications and treatment of some of the board members standing up for the statement that the union passed in June. Barbara was mentioning that there was a short statement that VSA issued in support of Black Lives Matter and the George Floyd murder. But the inconsistencies that came out since then were the VSEA executive director was on that in the same hearing that the member testified and said nothing. So didn't clarify what VSEA's position was or wasn't. And since then, right up until this week, the leadership of the organization has still not taken a position on chokeholds one way or the other to clarify that legislative hearing and whether or not that member was officially representing them or not, or just simply coming up with a position to clarify where Vermont needs to go on, I think, that critical piece of legislation. But I think more to the point, I do not believe in the cancel culture. I think, first of all, that's not a way to build community or understanding. It only polarizes. And what we put forward in the statement, myself and the other three candidates, was a clear calling in for conversation and critical engagement. And we're not going anywhere. Many of us are the labor movement. I've spent my whole career in the labor movement, and other folks who, and I used to be a union member when I was working for the union, of course. I have a deep commitment there. And that's why I have a deep commitment to stay in conversation and figure out, how do we have those hard conversations? Because there's membership with corrections, there's members for that union in the state trooper division. So there's a lot there to unpack. So it's not just, unfortunately, it's not just a couple members. So that's why I think it's so critical to cast light on it.
Well, thank you. I mean, I'll vote for you anyway. And by the way, me too, the same union, only a half a generation before you.
Oh, good to know. Okay. Okay.
So I don't see any other questions for Emma. And actually your time is just about up. So that's it's perfect. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Stay well. Thank you.
Likewise. All right. Next up, let's go. Is Brian Chena in the house? Oh, Keisha Ram has her hand up. Can we get her in?
Hi, I'm sorry.
Hi.
I just, I apologize. It has caused me so much anxiety to like not be able to see everybody else as a viewer that I had no idea. It's the only one where I've ever experienced sort of having just not having any control. So that's a good lesson about me. But I was just trying to make sure that I'm here and I'm visible. So apologies for the interruption. I'm just here. I was just getting off another panel, so I'll just wait my turn.
No worries. I mean, honestly, while we got you, I mean, you're a candidate for the general election, so you're on this agenda item. You just Brian.
Is Brian here?
Also has his hand up.
Good.
We could just keep you on as a panelist and just mute you while we figure out what Brian has to say. Let's see. Bring him in here too. Thank you for bearing with me. This is my first time kind of coordinating a Zoom call.
Hi. Yeah, I wasn't trying to interrupt Keisha. You had called on me, and I was trying to say to you, I'm here. Like I'm in this weird limbo. What's going on? But this one blue hand. So I don't know. I don't even know how much time we have or not. But I can speak for a quick minute and then hand it right over to Keisha maybe, and like we can just keep moving along.
Cool. That sounds great. Yeah.
All right. So what is the timing here? Like, I don't know how many more people we have. Do I have 2 minutes? Do I have 3 minutes?
I gave Emma 5 and she didn't quite make it there. And I was figuring like 5 and 5, like 5 speaking, 5 Q&A.
I'll make it,
however you want to do it.
Yeah, I'll be quicker than 5. I'll just jump right in.
Yeah,
So my name is Brian Chena. I live in the Old North End. I'm running unopposed with Selena Colburn for one of the 2 seats for Chittenden 6-4, which is a piece of the Old North End in Ward 2, a big piece of Ward 1 and a tiny piece of Ward 8 and a piece of Ward 6 that I don't think anyone actually lives in. But I do represent the trees and animals of that piece of Ward 6. So that being said, I'm happy to be running for re-election. Like, as I've said in the past, as a social worker, I spend my time every day working with individuals and families, trying to address the problems that rise out of our economy and out of our social systems. But as a state representative, I get to work on the organizational and state and community level to try to change laws and policies and so that we can change the systems that are causing those problems that my clients face. And so this past year, it's been a very rough year. I feel like my whole time in the legislature has been strange because we have a governor who has vetoed budgets and vetoed bills, and then the climate is collapsing right now around us, and the earth is burning down, and then this pandemic hit, and we're in this unprecedented. Oh my God, I said unpresidential, which is really an interesting Freudian slip after last night. But we're in this unprecedented time, I have to be honest with you that I have the same fear a lot of other people have going into the next 2 years, and I'm not sure what to expect. I am going to share with you some remarks I made on the floor of the House last week. I did vote no on the state budget, and I wanted to explain to my constituents why. The state budget did an excellent job of maintaining the status quo during a period of unprecedented economic uncertainty. But what is the status quo? You know, and to me, the status quo is people having to choose between working or staying home with their children because they can't afford to both work and pay for childcare. And the status quo is people struggling to live paycheck to paycheck, and they have to worry about choosing between the roof over their heads or food on their tables. The status quo is students like myself, sort of saddled with massive amounts of debt for our whole lives, while bank executives are walking away with record salaries and bonuses. The status quo is waiting weeks and weeks and weeks for unemployment assistance, which creates tremendous stress, financial stress that erodes people's health. And the status quo, it's the sound of fighter jets blaring overhead morning, noon, and night, disturbing the lives of some of the poorest and brownest people in our state while they're stuck working and learning from home. The status quo is also a growing police state, a school to prison pipeline that perpetuates oppression, and that goes back to the very foundation of our economic system, which was built on land that was stolen from indigenous people on the backs of enslaved people. And the status quo is the collapse of our ecosystems. It's climate change. It's a way of life out of balance with the web of life and our Mother Earth. So for far too long, we've invested the appropriations of our state into an extractive economy that is actually causing many of the problems that we're trying to solve. And we are caught in an endless circle of spending money on systems that end up having a great financial, social, emotional, and spiritual cost to people and to the planet. And the coronavirus pandemic, it has only magnified the existing inequities of our extractive economy, which continues to exploit the labor of people and the resources of our planet. And so when the economy was functioning under normal conditions, we were told that it isn't the time to change. We don't want to mess anything up. And now that the economy is struggling under these unprecedented conditions, we're told now's not the time to change. We can't change anything, you know. When will the time for change come? You know, we cannot afford to wait any longer. So I'm hoping that in this next session, we can build a state budget from a different state of mind that works towards collective liberation and a sustainable way of life that takes care of everyone and our planet better. And the way I'm hoping to do that is I am a steering committee member with the Racial Justice Alliance, and we're going to be coming forward with a proposal for a process to build a people's budget that looks at the appropriations of our state differently. I'm going to continue to advocate for the concept of a regenerative economy and a process to engage the state in building a regenerative economy roadmap. And if you want to see more details, you can Google H868 from the Vermont legislature from this year and see the latest version of that. But I do plan to work with people from around the state to take it to another level. And I'll just end on a note that we've had some, despite all the challenges, we've had some victories this year. Because of the massive civil unrest and protests around the country and even here in our own city, we've seen changes in criminal justice policy and in law enforcement. We've seen law enforcement reform, and we've seen bills like pieces of bills that the Racial Justice Alliance proposed get woven into other bills. So the state's embarking on a journey towards looking at restructuring public safety, and I believe the time is ripe for that, and I hope to keep doing some of that work moving forward. And I also want to celebrate that with the Abenaki community. After changing Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day last year, this year we were able to pass 2 bills involving Aboriginal rights. One of them gives free hunting and fishing licenses to Abenaki people who are enrolled in a state tribe, and the other one is going to have Abenaki place names added to state park signs as they're replaced. Both of these bills are acts of decolonization and that honor the history of the place in which we live. So I might have gone closer to 4 minutes. I'm sorry, but I'll stop there for questions and then hand it off to Keisha.
Great. Do we have any questions? We got time for probably one question, if anyone's got it. Going once, going twice. Doesn't look like anyone has raised their
Kevin,
hand. So
I just move fast. Really, and other people might too. I don't know. If there's somebody else, ask, if you just have time for one question, let somebody else ask it. Is there anybody else in the queue?
no.
Okay, it's not a question, Brian. That was a beautiful statement, number one. And number two, I just wanted to comment that I was really glad to see Act 50 go to the governor's desk without the provision that exempts downtowns. I think it was very important to me to see that not in there. There was several articles and comments written to Vermont Digger finally before all that happened that gave the rationale why that should not happen. And as a downtown resident, I really appreciate that.
Thank you for the feedback.
Cool. Thank you, Barbara. And thank you, Brian. That's looks
Thank
like that's all we got. So thank you. All right. Next up is Keisha. Can we unmute? There we go. All right. Take it away.
Thanks so much, Kevin and Ward 23 NPA. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Keisha Ram. I spent 8 years in the House, actually the seat that's now held by Brian in the Ward 1-8 area. So, you know, great to follow him actually. In fact, it feels like there was a lot of legislation I introduced that was resoundingly put back on the wall and did not come up for discussion. And I served all prior to 2016. So I feel like a pattern emerged where we weren't ready to have these conversations, and something changed in 2016 where we became ready to have these conversations, including changing the Christopher Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day, which I introduced in 2011. Use of force investigations by the police, you know, really sort of starting to question the status quo. And I'm really proud of Brian and excited, knock on wood, to work for him, work with him, work for him in the Senate. You better remember that I said that, Brian. But, you know, work alongside him. And if I'm fortunate enough to be elected in November. I also want to say I'm so sorry, because in the middle of the summer, I was supposed to come to this NPA and it was a really hot day and we didn't have AC at the time. So I was down at the lake and the same thing happened on my phone with just the little hand. And I got really confused and concerned and signed off. So now you see a little bit about my personality. I got very worried just seeing that little hand that I didn't know if I was there or not or what was happening. But I'm sorry that I missed that time with you, and I wanted to raise my little blue hand and make sure I was here with you now. I really love to, you know, answer questions. I think a lot of people have a sense of who I am. I would be the first woman of color in the state Senate and the youngest woman in history to be in the state Senate. And I just mention that because to me, it's not just a privilege and an honor, it's a great responsibility to advance economic, racial, and social justice, and to continue to uplift the voices of those less heard in Vermont and in our government. And with that, you know, I really would love to open it up for a couple of questions based on people's deepest passions or concerns right now that I can address.
Awesome. Yeah, if anyone has a question for Keisha, raise your little blue hand. We'll bring you in. Give everyone a second. Going once, going twice.
Tony? I think Tony, I don't know.
Oh, Tony. All right. Tony, you're on.
Yes, since no one else would ask a question. Keisha, again, I want to emphasize, I said at the beginning of the public forum that I just learned this past month that in Burlington, 24.7% of our residents live live in households with poverty income, which amounts to, as you know, roughly $400 a month income for a family of 4. This compares to the statewide of 10.4%, 10.8% in the county. This is devastating. We live, our incomes in this city are comparable to a poor southern county, Southern American county. This is outrageous, and I don't think that our representatives, and I think that Brian Chena really did state what a lot of us feel, but we also know now. I feel I'm a statistician. I never knew that statistic that 1 out of 4 of our people are living in poverty. That's back in the Big Depression, and our political leadership, and it's Democratic. Let's be clear, it's a Democratic mayor, has not educated us and kept us informed of what's going on. And I don't see the thrust in either the legislature at the moment, which has all the things that Brian Chena talked about. Something has to be done about income inequality and the racial disparities that exist in our city. I don't know what to attack first, but I'll stop there.
Well, Tony, there's a lot of angles that I want to address from what you said, but I do remember, obviously it's changed a little bit over time, but when I first started working for the mayor in 2011, we talked a lot about that statistic. And at the time, it was really hard to gather if they had accounted for the student population and their relatively low income, just because they are choosing not to work, they're in school. And, as we think about how students are counted in the census, which we hope they are, because this is where they generally are on April 1st, I don't think we were able to drill down and get a different number to help us differentiate between people who are identified as a student or not. So I just want to say that, I don't want that to minimize the fact that for a long time, and possibly to this day, the Old North End of Burlington has had one of the highest concentrations of poverty in New England. I have a lot of thoughts on policy to address poverty, but I think I would love to return to that with you as a statistician and better understand, how to get more clear about the numbers. And in fact, that is my professional work in a lot of ways. I am an environmental justice scholar. And one of the things that we look at to map out is how close people of certain income groups, people who are renters and people who identify as Black, Indigenous, or person of color, how close they live to parks, how close they live to Superfund sites, how close they are to pockets of poor air quality. So in fact, in my professional work, I try to marry both data and, anecdotal and qualitative information to better understand what we're experiencing. And I plan to introduce an environmental justice policy, which is a separate thing. But I think, for our purposes in Burlington, one of the more helpful poverty statistics has been around our school population and how many kids are free or reduced lunch. Certainly don't want to leave out seniors and people who are experiencing poverty who don't get captured in family statistics. But one of the best ways to address poverty, and as some folks know, I took a 4-year hiatus from elected office in Vermont. 2 of those years were spent at the Kennedy School of Government, where my mentors were Jason Furman, who was Obama's last chief economic advisor, and his class was called Income Inequality and Household Income Growth. And he became a great mentor for me, as well as a mentor, a successor of his in the School of Education at Harvard, David Deming, whose focus is education and income inequality. And so one of the things we know is that for every year a child is in school, their income goes up considerably. And the question was always, if you're going to put dollars into one thing or the other, which I hope there's money for both at the end of the day, and like Brian would fight for a different paradigm in our budget, does it matter if it's early childhood education or higher education? And I think where that starts to break down policy-wise in terms of trade-offs is that if you invest in early childhood education, you change overall quality of life in a community, you change overall poverty rates, overall crime statistics, and it takes decades, but it's incredibly long-lasting change in a community. If you invest in higher education, you make the individual incomes of the people who access college higher. So both are important, but we also then have to look at who makes it to college in order to really change income inequality. Part of income inequality in the last 20 years has been who is able to access college and who is not. So I think about it mostly from an education lens, but as folks may know, I mean, I spent years on the housing committee and focus a lot on transportation and see a lot of these as contributing factors to you know, what engenders poverty. But as you said, part of my work right now is asking people about their pandemic experience, and it's different digitally underserved communities, people who might not be able to figure out what resources are even available to them in a pandemic. And there's a lot of overlap between, are these folks able to access the internet? Are they lingually underserved and they come from communities where they aren't getting economic and health information for 2 weeks until everybody else has gotten in line for economic resources or, you know, figured out where the testing sites are? Are they people with disabilities? So who are we leaving behind in the pandemic, and what are we exacerbating? And we saw with Hurricane Irene, Tropical Storm Irene, that there was a lot of lingering trauma and inequity that resulted. For example, 8% of our state population live in mobile home communities, but they were 40% of who was affected by Irene and displaced. So if we don't pay attention to moments of crisis and try to really think about who needs to be better off coming out of it, we miss incredible opportunities when a system is disrupted to change that income inequality and help put people on a path out of poverty. Hope that made sense.
I'd just like to add two items. One, there's 2,000 households that are on the waiting list for housing support at Burlington Housing Authority and Cathedral, which Cathedral being the senior housing. And the other statistic is that, which is a statewide one, is the fact that we, as you know, there was quite a discussion, in fact, in the legislature at the time, of the 10-year plan in the early 2000s to deal with childhood poverty in the state. And after 10 years, the finding was we hadn't done a thing. We still had the same percentage of kids that were living in poor households.
Right.
So those two, forget the students in Burlington, and I agree that's hard to determine. But there's some very hard data that tells us that we have a severe problem, which has only become more exacerbated, which is apparently a popular word right now, by the pandemic. So, and the refusal of this governor to raise money, to raise taxes, to deal with social needs is as reprehensible as some of the things that are going on in DC.
I don't want to say too much more and take up more time, but I hope one of the next people who speaks can speak to the focus in the legislature this year on understanding the need to weight students differently who experience poverty or on the free or reduced lunch program and speak English as not their first language, but another language. And, you know, we have nibbled around the edges with that, but there was a study that said if we don't weight students at 5 times greater the support to them for our lower income students, we're never going to close that gap. So I don't know if we're going to get to 5 times, but I'm glad it was that high of a number so we can get a lot closer than we are now. But really appreciate your focus, Tony, and I want to let others speak to that. I really appreciate you all giving me so much time this evening. And kesharam.com, KESHARAM.com has my cell phone number, has my email address. I hope to be available to all of you. So thank you.
Oh, and Jeannie had her hand up. I brought her in a little too.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He has a
Hey.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah. Hey, super. Thanks for reading my mind. The weighted pupil study. I've actually sent a link to Jess that I think she's going to be able to add to the meeting notes. Unfortunately, on this platform, we can't share a link to something, but that's exactly what I wanted to ask Dave Zuckerman about. And I'm so glad that this is on your radar. I cannot tell you, as a school board member, I cannot tell you how important this is to Burlington.
Yeah.
How our students have not been equitably served, financially served, because we are dealing with an antiquated system. And honestly, everything from this study basically says that they came up with like an arbitrary, I'm going to be really crass, they pulled something out of their hind parts as far as a ratio for how students with specific needs could be antiquated financially in the budget. And it's not working. And there's been a large deficit in Burlington. Burlington students have been suffering for years. This system, it's basically from like the late 70s, and we've been working with it as much as we can. But yeah, it needs to be completely ratified. So thank you so much for bringing that up. And Jess, please, if you can, put this in the notes. That would be great. I know that the school board has tons of things that there's pots boiling over. But this is one of the main things that we have been working on behind the scenes. It feels like one of the most important things. In my opinion, it's one of the most important things. We're not letting it go, but obviously we're hitting tons of walls with how to communicate, how to move forward. And yeah, when everybody who's in office has to get together and figure out COVID relief funds and all that kind of stuff, all this stuff has gone by the wayside. But this is one of the main things that would prevent, I don't want to say prevent poverty, but would address, Tony, all of those things you brought up tonight. Thank you so much. This is one of those things that would serve our city definitely so well. So.
Thank you, Jean.
Thanks, Jean. I look forward to working with you. Thank you all.
Oh, yeah.
And I see Erica has a question, but unfortunately we've already gone over time for your segment. Is there a good email to reach you at? Yeah, for Erica. Yeah, so thank you for coming by, Keisha. Appreciate you. Cool. Next up, we've got, let's see, Jill. We should bring Jill Krawinski in if she's ready. Oh, where'd you go? How do I bring you in? Promote to panelists. There we go. Thank you for hanging with me here. Hey, Jill, are you there?
Oh, hello. Can you hear me all right?
Yes. Hello.
Hi. It's so great to see you.
It's good to see you too.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jill Krawinski. I represent the Old North End in downtown Burlington, along with Kurt McCormick. I'm so sad that we're not over having this conversation on Allen Street. Jess, congratulations and thank you for joining the steering committee. That's fantastic. And Carol, I know Carol went to the YouTube channel, but Carol, we miss your sunshine. I have to tell you, as a legislator who's been representing the Old North End in downtown since 2012, this COVID pandemic has rocked our community in a way that I've never seen before. And I can't tell you the number of calls and emails and interactions that I've had with our neighbors who are suffering greatly. And I just want to say to everyone listening that we are still not through this, and I am here for you if you need anything, because we're still dealing with housing issues, unemployment issues, hazard pay issues, healthcare issues, you name it. So I just want to reiterate to everyone that just because session is over doesn't mean that you still can't reach out to get the help you need. So I know a lot has already been covered tonight and we're getting near the end, so I'll just speak briefly so we can get to questions. But I will say this was a historic legislative session, and a lot of the issues that you in the district care about, who you wrote me about or called me about, we made sure to take action on. Regarding COVID, we did a tremendous amount of work around hazard pay, unemployment, housing, healthcare. I think the governor did a good job helping to get us through this pandemic. But I have to say, I'm greatly disappointed and agree with what Tony said, that we are moving behind. There is no vision on how we can make sure that we have economic justice in our communities and across our state. We had to override the governor's veto on the Global Warming Solutions Act, a key piece of legislation to ensure that we are doing what we can to lower our greenhouse emissions in this state. We had to override the governor on minimum wage this is a fundamental way that we can help people out of poverty. And we had to override that veto. We did some work to ensure that we expanded and made childcare more affordable. We passed tax and regulation of cannabis. We did work around police reform and criminal justice reform. And I have to say one thing, given the loss of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, that's sticking with me right now is our work on reproductive rights. We have a constitutional amendment that we have to vote on this upcoming session to change the Constitution to include that reproductive rights are protected. And so that is something that I am eager to go back to the legislature to work on, to ensure that we make sure that our reproductive rights are protected in Vermont. I will say that the waiting study is definitely on my radar, and I look forward to working with Eugene and the school board on that when we go back to session. I'm on a mission to create a Vermont that works for everyone, not just a select few. And I really appreciate your support, and I hope I can count on your vote, as well as Kurt McCormick. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jill. Any questions? You got about 6 minutes left in your time slot. If anyone has one, raise your little blue hand. Going once, going twice. And I'm not seeing any. So thank you for being here. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a great night.
You too. All right. So moving on, we have one more candidate. It looks like. Actually, how about this? Any remaining? I know Erica is a remaining candidate on this section of the agenda. Anybody else waiting for that? Okay, so Erica, let's bring you in. All right, Erica, can you hear us?
I can, but there appears to be something wrong with my webcam. I'm just curious, I wondered if all the candidates were going to get 15 minutes to talk about their candidacy and things that they think are important.
The goal is 10 as usual, but if there's a question, I don't like to really cut that off.
Got it, fair enough.
So
so my name is Erica Reddick. I am a Burlington resident. I live in the new north end of Burlington, born and raised Vermonter, and went to Champlain College, got a bachelor's degree in accounting. And so a lot of the time you'll hear me talking about my campaign, it's centered around the economy and finances, taxes, things like that. That's especially because of my background and specialty in accounting and helping businesses really thrive in troubling times. So I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm a small business consultant. I literally help businesses recover from the brink of bankruptcy and trouble. So a lot of times it's not that there are major problems with the business. It's just maybe they don't understand how the economics work. Maybe they need to raise their prices. Maybe they need to adjust some of the things that they're doing. But most importantly, what you want to do is you want to take a step back with any business and you want to measure the things that you're doing and see if they are effective and providing the results that you hoped for. So what I see a lot in the Vermont State Legislature currently is, if something is not working, the solution is raise taxes and add more money to the problem. And so I just really would love for us to, instead of adding the burden to the already struggling residents that we have here, what I would really like to see is us opening up our economy. So the Economist magazine and other publications have rated Vermont a terrible place to do business. They literally rated us 49th in business friendliness. That's why you see businesses moving out of here at a staggering rate. That's why you see middle class and starting families leaving Vermont. We do have, in fact, a population decline. So we're actually losing people. And the only people that are moving in are very wealthy, who are not necessarily contributing to the economy by running businesses and doing things like that. They're making Vermont their second home. And so if we want to be able to provide all of the services that I've heard everyone talk about tonight, if we want to be able to provide justice, equity, and all of those things, we need money to do it. And unfortunately, we cannot tax the wealthy and middle class. Even if we taxed them at 100%, it would still not be enough to cover the $5 billion debt we're facing here in Vermont. So love to hear the wins from our current legislators, but they have, some of them, gone on record as saying that they are not going to address the $4.5 billion pension deficit. And that was pre-COVID. So that was pre-COVID, before the stock market crash, and before anyone realized that their estimates were on a 7.5% return, which is not feasible. So then we had a $500 million budget shortfall, which makes a total of $5 billion, and that was pre-COVID. So if there's not enough money here, if we can't extract enough in taxes out of the people who already live here and the businesses that already exist, what we need to do is grow our tax base. Two ways you can raise taxes or raise revenue. If you're a municipality, you can raise people's taxes like we do here in Vermont all of the time, and make it suffocating so that people just leave. Or we can open up the economy, open up segments of the economy. We can deregulate some of the land use laws so that people can build enough apartment buildings to house the people that we have here. That in turn will lower the cost of living, and it'll lower property values so that the property taxes will equal out. More people will be paying in, and then we'll have enough to make it. This idea, this tax and spend policy, and the way that our current legislators do it, I just don't think they understand that Vermonters just can't pay anymore. They just can't pay anymore. And so if we encourage people to move in here, we encourage businesses to move in here, we will increase our tax base, we'll have enough money to afford all of those things. And then with that, we'll also be able to address the staggering mental health and drug abuse crises that we're facing here in the state of Vermont. A lot of people don't realize this, but 30% of suicides are because of lack of employment and opportunity. So our Vermont legislature is passing gun laws that they're saying is intended to prevent suicides, but they're not addressing the lack of jobs and the lack of opportunity, which causes at least 30% of those suicides. And so with this lockdown, yes, it's great. We have good COVID numbers. We've only lost about 60 people here in the state of Vermont, but we've had more than double the suicides and more than double the drug overdoses because of these lockdowns. So, we want to do the right things, but we need to measure and test and make sure that the things that we're doing are effective. It sounds great that our numbers are low in COVID, but when you factor in the real cost and how many lives we've lost as a result of these policies, I just don't see it as a win. it's just hard to see it as a win when so many more people are dying and suffering, can't afford to feed their children and things like that. So I don't know how much time I have. I'm sorry, I didn't track it. Oh, I still have 5 minutes. Oh my God,
Well, yeah, for like your entire time slot. So if you want Q&A,
okay, great, perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you, Kevin.
That was nice. Yeah,
I'm happy to take questions.
cool. Raise your little blue hand if anyone's got a question for Erica, or anyone who's a panelist. Just give a good wave. I'll expand out so I can see all of you. All right. Not seeing anybody. Oh, we got Barbara. All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for unmuting me. Erica, so I just want to make sure I understand you correctly. So you're not in agreement with the way Governor Scott has governed to keep Vermonters safe? You think his closing down of things has been too aggressive? Is that what you're saying?
That is what I'm saying, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to check that out. It just seems to me that businesses, putting the public safety issues behind us if we can, it just seems to me that it's short to think that businesses and movies and all the things that you want to see reopen, that we all want to see reopen, can happen when it's not safe to do so. They can open to their heart's content. People will not come if it's not safe. And that is where I think that reasoning is just backwards. I don't mean to say go back.
Okay, so you're okay with the increase in suicides and drug overdoses, the 3 gang shootings that we've had in the New North End, the 30% increase in calls for domestic violence, the 30% increase in calls for child abuse.
I do not attribute them to the pandemic or the close downs. I really do not. And I don't think that you can prove that they are attributable to that. I'm finished. Thank you.
The increase in domestic violence and the increase in child abuse and the increase in drug overdoses and suicides, you don't believe we can connect to a major shutdown of the economy where people lose the ability to take care of their families, where children are now at home all day with abusive parents?
Our responsibility then is to ensure those people have the wherewithal to do so, not to make Vermonters unsafe because they do not. Thank you.
Oh, okay. I want to agree, unfortunately. Yeah.
Erica, I want to add that, as somebody who's affiliated with the school system, of course, we have been alerted to the need for more interactions, both in person and online, with vulnerable populations in reaction to the shutdown, to social distancing, to online learning, but that is not saying we should open everything up, as in just give me 1 second.
Yeah.
I want to say, we believe the CDC guidelines and the standards and whatever we're following is actually keeping us healthy. I know you're talking about abuse and, when people are left alone, yes, they are more susceptible to their vices. That is unfortunate. But when they are out and about, they're susceptible to COVID. And we know, I just want to say, heroin addiction is not addictive. You don't stand in line with somebody who's an addict and then catch it. It's different, right? So we are trying. Does that sound weird to you?
Oh yeah, I must not have anyone in your family that's a drug addict, and that's a blessing.
I do, actually.
Oh, okay, well then
plenty.
Then to say
And
that
I can tell you right now,
stays,
being in the same room with them does not mean that I can catch a virus that will make me an addict.
Okay.
The different
But they do affect the
science.
people around them, don't they?
Of course they do. And
Right.
we
And
are-
I'm not saying
we
people
have
should
all-
go around.
But what I'm
not
saying
saying-
is we already had these family members. We've already been dealing with addiction and crime and
Okay.
yeah.
Got it.
And
Okay.
all
May
that
I now
stuff.
respond?
And now,
May I now respond?
give me one more second. And now we are more isolated. But I can tell you that the efforts should not be about opening up our community. It doesn't make sense. Yes, we should make an effort to have more in-person connections with the people in need, not just say carte blanche. Yeah, everybody, let's meet up on the street. And yes, respond all you want. Thank you. I'm done.
Well, I don't believe what I said was everyone should just leave their house and go start licking doorknobs and spitting in each other's faces and like making out with strangers. Like I'm nearly certain I didn't say that. What I did say, however, was that we need to put people back to work and we need to open up our economy responsibly. There are many other states that are less restricted, that are not having crazy numbers. And I think that that's reasonable. I've talked to educators, many educators, para-educators especially, who are talking about the devastating effects the masks and all of these things are going to have on developmental, how they're going to create developmental issues in our children. And so again, we're just going to have to agree to disagree that all of the consequences and all of the harm and damage that we're doing to our most vulnerable is a equal trade-off. I'm not convinced. Not when I see the suffering.
Kevin, you're muted.
All right. So anyway, we have one more question for you, Erica, from Patrick. Go ahead, Patrick.
Erica, it's really nice to hear a Republican opinion in a mostly progressive ward where most of them are pretty tight knit and look out for each other and have been socialists for far longer than Bernie was here. That said, it is not my opinion. I don't necessarily share it with you, but it is refreshing to hear a little bit different opinion. So are you saying that a lot of stuff you seem to be saying is in the benefit of hindsight? We don't have a lot of data that says, that told us in the beginning of this, that if we kept our businesses open and our economy going, that we wouldn't have incurred more deaths due to COVID than we would have that we're seeing because of drug overdose. We don't have that benefit. We don't have the science data that shows our children are going to have cognitive issues. We just don't, people are saying that, but we won't know. And the safety of all of us depends on all of us doing it together. And I'm not sure if I'm mishearing you. And because you have a Republican point of view, which is, you know, appreciated, and I won't deny that it is a valued opinion, but I'm a little confused by if the information you're sharing with us, it just, I don't know where you're getting it, because there's no causation correlation for a lot of what you're saying. We just don't know the other side of if we didn't do something. And yet you seem to imply that, you know, you have that data. The other thing is, I heard you speak a lot about businesses, as a small business owner. I live with a small business owner. You know, I don't know if a lot of what you're saying about small businesses is true.
Which part?
You know, which part? Getting people back. We're all doing pretty well. I think the governor's Republican. He's done a pretty good job with making sure a lot of us in the small business field, health, human services, medical, have kept going. There's going to be a lot of businesses that fail, and I see that. Those businesses were largely teetering. It strikes me. And this is what hyperbole, it's my opinion, there's no data. I don't know if it's the right thing to do to just open it up and wish and hope. We have data that shows what happens when disease spreads based upon
Well,
7
we
or 8
also,
years. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't
no,
want to
I'm sorry. I apologize.
No, I should stop because you're running, not me.
No, they're good questions. I just sometimes forget that it's not a conversation, you know, so
Yeah. True enough.
let people finish. I will say we do have evidence of things. So there are plenty of states throughout the country that are similarly set up as Vermont, very rural, very few urban centers. And they did not have as harsh of a lockdown as we did. And they don't have spiking numbers. They're not out of control. You look at states like South Dakota, even parts of Texas were not hit in the rural areas. So Houston had a spike, Dallas had a spike. You know, the major cities where everyone is sort of on top of each other, that's where you were having a lot of the problems. A lot of the riots and things like that brought spikes. But the data that I gave you for businesses, so two things. I don't say anything that I can't back up with facts. So as far as the suicide statistics, I looked those up earlier this year because I wanted to compare our COVID numbers. I wanted to be really certain that to see what was happening. And as of May, so 2 months into the lockdown, suicides and drug overdoses were already double.
But can you say that those numbers wouldn't have been the same had we have not imposed restrictions? Because if we had lost the projection, if we had lost what we lost in 1917, the amount of depression and suicide of losing entire families may have been greater.
And that's fine. If we did this through May, June, maybe even July.
I don't know if I would call it fine.
No. I'm saying at a certain point, when you start to get some data in and when you start to see the effect of what's happening, you have to make a different decision. And the fact that we're still under emergency orders in September, when the vast majority of the country is almost wholly back to work.
We're the only state that does not have any community spread. We are the top state in terms of effectiveness.
And that's great.
A lot to say.
And that is really great. And so
how did we get here though? Why did we get here?
Patrick, let me ask you this. How much more are you willing to sacrifice? How much more do you think the people who are unable to feed their children, the people who are having their homes foreclosed on, all of the people who are suffering from this lockdown, that have lost their businesses, up to 30% will not restart and they were not teetering businesses. Of all of those, how many more people do you believe should have to suffer? We're allowed as Vermonters to make our own decisions.
I can't disagree.
Be willing to trust your neighbors to make good decisions.
How many people would have suffered if we don't continue? We just don't know. We're doing the best we can with the limited amount of data. Next time it happens, I think you would have a better point with better data.
I don't think.
Anyways,
I don't
want to make it. We all have the benefit of hindsight.
Common sense, I think, is a really important thing. Is that what you just said? I'm sorry.
It's not very common, but
I
do hear you actually have a solid opinion more than a lot of the Republican end of what I hear. You actually present yourself very, very well. And I do appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It is very hard to overcome the prejudice against conservatives here in Chittenden County. It is.
You probably share a lot more common values with the rest of us than you realize.
Because we do. And this is what is so unfortunate about it. It's why I took out a whole page ad in the 7 Days Voter Guide and I called it Debunking Myths About Conservatives. There's this belief that somehow not.
I I'm just
All
gonna
right.
I'm gonna pop in here just for a sec, just because I'm just looking at the time. We are just about running out of time, and we still haven't heard from our 3 school board members who have been waiting patiently. So Kevin, I'm sorry, I hope you don't mind. I just sort of jumped in. But Eric,
No, thank you.
thank you.
Not at all. Yeah, I
Thank
was
you.
just
And
about to
thank
do
you
the
for the
same.
extra time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Erica and Patrick, I really appreciate the conversation you just had. And Erica, I hope you maybe will, I'm one of the patiently school board members. Erica, I hope you maybe like set up a Zoom for us to further this conversation, because I agree with Patrick. I'm interested. I want to talk more.
Well, and you can, I also, if you.
Hey, no.
Oh,
We can't go
sorry.
further. I'm
Sorry.
saying like, let's like set something else up for us to Zoom in another time. Okay. Because I do want to talk and I'm not cutting you off. I'm saying.
No.
This is a
I'll
bigger
email Patrick.
conversation.
I see it on here.
Yeah.
I see his email. I'll email him.
Yeah, cool. And also it looks like there was a question from Brian Chena, but also same deal. Connect after. Sounds like a bigger conversation. Thank you, Erica, for being here and giving us your time and whatnot. And yeah, appreciate you. All right. So moving on to school board members. So we already have Jean in the panelists, and we also have Stephen Carey. Is there anyone else? Nope. Cool. Everyone is in the panelists section here.
Hi, Kevin. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I am the 3rd school board rep. I'm Polly Vanderputten, and this is my first Ward 2-3 NPA meeting. So you won't know me yet, but
Well,
you'll know
welcome.
me tonight. Thank you.
Yeah. It's not as lively and fun as they typically are. Looking forward to having community dinner again. That'll be
I
sweet.
just want to say, Polly, 3 is the magic number. Okay. And Stephen, poor Stephen.
Stephen had a power outage and he's looking a little creepy right now.
I'm in the dark in more ways than one.
That's hardcore. You're in a power outage right now.
Yes. I'm in a parking lot of a closed library in Maine.
Oh my God. That's dedication. Wow.
But I'm amazed that the connection is as good as it is, because it was fading in and out earlier. But
well, all right, let's start while the iron's hot then. Stephen, why don't you start
okay.
Start off. Yeah.
Well, I'll just say hi and thank you everyone for being here and listening. And I have no prepared information, but I'll just talk extemporaneously about some thoughts that I've had. And I know that Jeannie and Polly have, will back me up or whatever. But I just want to acknowledge that, all of the things that are going on in the district right now. It's just incredibly complicated. And I want to just acknowledge the wise oversight that our superintendent has had on trying to maintain, the learning environment for all the 10 different schools that we have, and maintaining his connection with the public in many, many ways. He goes to many meetings and he puts out all kinds of information that's available on the website for anyone who has questions about details of what's going on. It's all over the place, and all kinds of information about everything regarding schedules, regarding food deliveries, regarding what's happening at Burlington High School, schedule changes, all that. So that information is out there for anyone who is looking for it in great detail. We can probably answer some questions that you might have tonight. We had a big meeting last night that included the state epidemiologist and the presentation from the superintendent, as well as many community participants who were asking some questions that concern them mostly about Burlington High School situation right now. But I would like to, I'm on the negotiations committee. I might as well, before I forget, I'd like to tell you that we have 3 contracts in the works right now. We've signed a letter of agreement with the support personnel and the teacher, and that's that's pretty much done. The teacher negotiations are on the verge of being settled, and I'll say that carefully because I don't want to share any information that's that's inappropriate at this time, but it is hopeful. There's hope. There's great hope for settlement with the teachers very soon, and then the paraprofessional contract is in the process of being worked right now. We've exchanged proposals on money, and we've exchanged proposals on the details of the contract itself. So we're moving along with those, I hope, very well. And given the state of chaos, not so much chaos, but given the state that exists in the system here, you know, I'm happy to say that there is this great communication going on with the community, and there's this real positive feeling going on between leadership and the employees of the district, which is a profound difference from where we've been in the past, so to speak. So I'm happy about that, happy to be a part of that. And I guess I'll just kind of stop there and let Polly and Jeannie chime in, but and then I'll hopefully be able to answer some questions that come up tonight. Thank you. Can you see me still in the shadows?
Barely. Can
Okay.
hear you a lot better than we can see you.
Okay.
I can also add one of the bargaining units that was psyched and is now settled is the AFSME, which includes food service, the IT department, I mean, many departments.
Bus drivers too.
Field service. So they were actually really, and by the way, it's a 2-year contract, but so you forgot that one, Stephen.
It's true. Yes, it's
that
true.
one happened long. That one happened a couple of months ago. So
I have all the details, but we won't go through that right now in terms of what that was. It was a good contract. People were very happy with it, especially the 2-year agreement.
Yeah. The thing I wanted to update everybody with is that the school safety task force is still seeking applications from students. We really want to have the student voice on this task force. And I will back up a little bit and give you some information about what I'm talking about. This is in reaction to the district joining in the effort to consider, or I don't know if the word consider is right, but the Social or Racial Justice Alliance City Council resolution was in line with the district resolution to evaluate student resource officers. And part of that resolution was to get community input in the form of a task force. And this task force needs a student voice. I have asked Jess to add a link to the application process. Please, if you know any students that want to be civically engaged in this process, I implore you to encourage them to apply. That's my big shtick. I don't know, Polly, what you want to add? I'll mute myself.
So, hi again, everybody. I'm the new Ward 3 school commissioner, and I attended a meeting this summer, but this is the first one where I'm like here and I'm talking about something. And listening to Stephen and Jeannie, I'm like, wow, yeah, there's a lot going on with the SRO and racial justice movement and the negotiations and the new superintendent and his efforts at communication. And I came tonight just to give you kind of a summary of this big meeting we had last night, like not assuming that everyone was able to attend, which was about the toxic chemicals they found at Burlington High School. So there's a lot of information. There was a lot of information shared that was really helpful, but the presentations are all on the BSDVT website. And I have a really specific web address if it helps to send it to you. It's the bsdvt.org/BHS renovations, where you can see the timeline going back to July 2019. I believe the PowerPoint that Dr. Levine presented with his team last night is also there. And the information from the state toxicologist, Sarah Vos, with her phone number and email if people want to send her or call her with direct questions, because people
Holly,
have a lot of concerns. Yeah.
I sent a recording of our meeting to Jess Hyman already to hopefully add to the notes. Please send Jess any of these links to add to the notes. But yeah, the full meeting was recorded on Facebook. Not everybody is on Facebook. Pretty sure there's other links that they can access, but yes, hopefully those will be included in the meeting, right, Jess?
Yep, I'll be sending them to Pitt and she'll be including them in the meeting minutes.
Thank you.
Great. And so for those of you who don't have 4 hours to give to watching that meeting, the bad news is that a lot of buildings, especially public buildings, especially school buildings built between the mid-1950s and the mid-1970s were built using these chemicals, PCBs. And the good news is that they're not built that way anymore, and that we learned about them in the early phases of the high school renovation. So we were not halfway through a major project with millions of dollars invested in it yet. The bad news is that PCBs can cause horrible illnesses and deaths like cancer. And I don't know if this is good news, if it's heartening at all, but they're everywhere. They're in our food supply chain. They're in all of us. They're all around us. And so that, I think, was meant to say, let's please be kind of rational about it and think really about long-term exposure. So I want to put it out there to people on this, in this forum, that if you know people who worked for a long time at Burlington High School, where we know now of a high level of exposure, please let them know. They should tell their medical provider. That's pretty much where we're at with this, because we don't know that these necessarily have caused illnesses, but we do know that high levels can cause illnesses. So I'm thinking especially about like long-term teachers, people who worked at the high school for 30, 35, 40 years who are now retired. Please get the word out to them. I think that's really, really important. Other community concerns that came up last night had to do with the shutdown of the school. The importance of in-person learning was made really clear by parents, the value of connections for this developmental age group. There was a stress on needing communication about what's happening at all times, particularly for new Americans. And I really appreciated that, because I know we have a high number of those people in our neighborhood, and that the multilingual liaisons were very articulate and clear about their needs. And this environment is really not working, especially this remote learning, just computer kind of environment is not working for our new American English language learning students and their families, and a lot of our special needs families. And I felt like the superintendent heard that, and the board heard that, and that there's a lot of action in the direction of trying to meet the needs of those families. So already the On Top program, the Horizons program, and the Intensive Special Needs program have found homes. And that's amazing given the time frame they've been working in, and that they prioritize that for those groups. Remaining now are the so-called normal traditional students. I don't know how else to phrase it, but the non kind of special program students and the ELL students. But I think there's momentum that's really positive toward meeting their needs, and I felt good about that. So for the future, we're looking for sites. Get the word out. There were a lot of places mentioned last night. There have been places mentioned in the media, but we want in-person learning to happen. And that is a priority that I think the community needs to know about. And also advocacy at the state level. We need money. The state needs to support this, as Chairperson Claire Wool has said several times, And as Superintendent Flanagan said last night, this is not a Burlington problem. This is a Vermont problem. And it's scary if we think about all the schools we need to test. We happened to know we needed to do this renovation. We happened to test, but there has been no state money since the recession of 2008 for construction projects in schools, and that must change. Like now we are in a crisis. So anything you can get out in the community, not just to say, what can you do, what can you give, but how do we put pressure on legislators to prioritize this, because it's unacceptable. We have health risks, and also now the social, emotional, developmental risks happening from students being in remote learning. It's not okay. So I just want to stress that. And to counter something someone said earlier, the candidate Erica Reddick, that we're losing people in Vermont, we are not losing people in Burlington. Our schools are like bursting at the seams. So I just want to make clear that narrative is not entirely true. It needs to be more nuanced. And I think that needs to go out more prominently too. We have important, vibrant, thriving communities with a lot of families, and we need money from the state to support us. Is there anything else you want to add, Stephen and Jeannie? Thanks everybody for listening to my overview, and please go to the BSTVT website.
I have two things to add to what you said. Correct. Why would the rental situation be so competitive if people were just flocking away, right? Data. And the other thing is, you know, I've worked in the Burlington School District on and off for, it's probably about 10 years before I settled at Rock Point School, where we have a mandatory training every year about asbestos. It is a thing. We know these things exist. We know how to coexist. I know that there is mandatory testing about things like lead, asbestos. I know that there's no mandatory testing about PCBs, and that statewide, that blows my mind. I don't understand how we are in this major health crisis, sort of whatever you want to call it, dilemma, and have essentially had very little oversight as to how to even know it exists and then mitigate it. So I'm just feeling like the state is failing us big time.
I would just say that to echo what Polly was saying regarding the success or failure of the program that's available for students right now, it's, you know, everyone seems to be treading water. People are working really, really hard in all aspects of our system, from the leadership right down to the kids in kindergarten. And it's not normal. It's not appropriate. And it's not appropriate to have kids, little kids, isolated at lunchtime and in mass all day long, and teachers trying to teach with their faces half covered. And I mean, I don't mean to be too pessimistic, but it's not where we have to be as soon as possible. And there's so much effort to get back to as normal a situation, as appropriate a situation as possible, that I think it's coming soon. And just to, you know, and this is true statewide, you know, it's people are treading water. We need to throw the lifeline, maybe that Polly was talking about, the money lifeline from the state and from the feds even. I'm sick of the expensive F-35s flying over when teachers are trying to teach something outside under tents, and knowing the cost that goes into that defense system. You know, it's very frustrating. But anyway, I won't go on. I just want to reiterate, It's very difficult for our new American students, our English language learners, our special needs kids, the Rock Point kids, you know, I mean, the On Top and Horizons kids, and everyone else, including the employees in the district. So, but I am an eternal optimist, and I do believe that we're turning the page soon, especially regarding providing appropriate daily structure to Burlington High School kids who are really isolated right now. But anyway, I'll stop there.
All right, thank you. Thank you. We have a question in the crowd. Barbara.
Well, I just,
go ahead.
yeah, I just wanted to clarify, are all three of you running? How many seats are open? I'm not sure.
None of us are running.
No, I think I am.
Oh,
I think I'm the only one.
but in
Okay.
March, right?
Sorry?
In March.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, not
March.
currently, yeah.
Barbara, yeah, sorry.
All right.
None of us do a turnover before March.
Okay.
This is just an update. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and thanks for the great update.
Cool. All right. Are there any other questions in the crowd? It's Jess, go ahead.
I just wanted to officially thank you for voting me in, and I'm looking forward to serving on the steering committee. And I want to remind anyone who's still listening and who are watching that the next regular steering committee meeting will be Thursday, October 8th at 6:30, and the agenda and Zoom link will be posted on the CETO website.
It's the NPA meeting, not the steering committee meeting, right?
Oh my gosh, yes. See, I'm already messing up. Yes, the regular NPA Ward 2-3 NPA meeting will be next Thursday, the 8th. So stay tuned for more info on that.
Great. Yeah, thank you. It's good bookend to the meeting. Everyone, the school board members, thank you for being here, and that was a great update. And Stephen, especially, I'm still just kind of, in awe. It's awesome.
Pretty scary. It looks pretty scary from here. It's early Halloween.
Halloween's not canceled, right? Yeah.
I want to encourage Charlie to keep us updated about what's going on with voting at our schools. We the three of us represent the schools where the polls are. So thank you, Charlie, for keeping us in the loop.
Good old Charlie, holding it down. He's muted, but I'm sure he heard you. Great, yeah. So I think we can call that a wrap unless anybody has anything else. Yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you for hanging with us and whatnot. And yeah, wish you well. Stay healthy.
Thanks, Kevin.
Good night, y'all.
Bye. Thank you.